we have considered the concept of sufficiency and I related it to the Fisher's information measure. We showed that if a statistic is sufficient, then the information contained in the sufficient statistic is the same as the information contained in the whole sample. However, we have also seen that for a given problem there can be various sufficient statistics. Suppose I consider a random sample x 1, x 2, x n, say x 1, x 2, x n from say normal mu sigma square. Then by using factorization theorem we showed that x bar and s square is sufficient. Okay. But using the same argument we may also say that x 1 plus x 2, x 3 plus and so on x n, and similarly we can say x 1 minus x bar square plus x 2 minus x bar square and say so on, say x I minus x bar whole square I is equal to 3 to n. This is also sufficient. Okay. And like that we can write several sets of sufficient statistics. So, now which one to use? Then naturally it should occur that the one which leads to the maximum reduction of the data should be used. That leads to the concept of minimal sufficiency. However, this concept I will introduce through the concept of partition. So, let me introduce the concept of partition. So, a partition of a space say X is a collection say E I of subsets of X such that union of E I is equal to X and E I intersection E j is equal to phi for I not equal to j. That means, it is a mutually exclusive sets and the union is equal to the full. That means, mutually exclusive and exhaustive subsets of a space, that is called a partition. The sets E I, they are called partition sets. Let T be a function from say x into another space y. Then the partition of x induced by the function T is the collection of the sets say T y, which is defined as the set of all those values x such that T x is equal to y. That means, corresponding to distinct values of y, look at the inverse image set, and each of this set when you consider, then that forms a partition. Let me explain through an example here. Say I consider x to be the set of real numbers and let us consider the function T x to be say x square. Then what is y then? Y is the 0 to infinity. Then if you consider say T y, then it will be equal to minus root y for all y greater than 0 and T 0 is of course 0. Then T 0 and T y for y greater than 0, this is a partition of x induced by T x. Let me give another example. Suppose I consider say x to be the set of say alphabets A, B, C, D and so on up to x, y, z. Then I define say T of say E, T of O, T of I and say T of A U say is equal to, for example, I write 1 and T of say remaining characters like B, C and so on, T of Z is equal to say 2. Then if I consider the inverse images of 1 and 2 respectively, then what you will get? E, I, A, O, U and another set will be remaining B, C and so on. Then this is the partition induced by this function T. Now, we can say that a function induces a partition. But given a partition, you may not be necessarily able to define a function uniquely. However, given a partition, we may not define a function uniquely. However, if two functions say T1 and T2 induce the same partition, then they must be one-to-one functions of each other. Let me take another example. Let us consider say x as the colors red, white, green, blue, yellow and say violet. I define a function T1 of say red and T1 of white. I assign the value say 1, say T1 of green and T1 of blue is equal to say 2, T1 of yellow and T1 of violet, suppose I define it to be 3 and I define say T2 x is equal to T1 x minus 2 whole square. Now, if you define this, then corresponding to T1 value is equal to 1, T2 will become 1 and corresponding to T1 is equal to 3 also T2 will become 1. Corresponding to the value T1 is equal to 2, T2 will be 0. So, the partition induced by T1 is red, white in one set, green and blue in another set and yellow and violet in another set. Because the value 1 corresponds to red and white, the value 2 corresponds to green and blue, the value 3 corresponds to yellow and violet. So, let me call this partition P1. Let us also find out the partition induced by T2. Now, let us see. T2 is taking values, T2 can take value 0, that is when T1 is equal to 2 and when T1 is equal to 1 or 3, T2 is taking value 1. So, the value 0 is corresponding to green and blue. So, the partition which is induced by T2, one set consists of green and blue, and one is correspondent to then red, white, yellow and violet. Red, white, yellow and violet. Let me call this partition P2. So, we say that partition P2 is a reduction of partition P1 if each partition set of P2 is a union of some members of P1. Now, here you observe the partition sets in P2, this set is the same as this set, and the second set here is a union of two sets of P1. So, in the above example, P2 is a reduction of P2, P1. Now, from here we can make out that if the partition induced by T2 is a reduction of the partition induced by T1, then T2 is a function of T1. So, we can make this statement that if Ti induces partition say Pi for I is equal to 1 2 and P2 is a reduction of P1, then T2 is a function of T1. So, now when we talk about a sufficient statistics T, then the corresponding partition sets will be T x is equal to T, where T values over the set of values of T. This is the partition sets induced by statistic T. Let T be sufficient. Now, the definition of sufficiency says that the conditional distribution of the data, that is x1, x2, xn given T must be independent of the parameter. So, we can say that the conditional distribution of x given x such that T x is equal to T is independent of the parameter. So, let me take one example. Let the parameter space consists of say 3 points theta 1, theta 2, theta 3, and let us consider say the variable space consisting of 3 points x 1, x 2, x 3, and let the probability mass function of x be given by probability x is equal to x 1. Now, when theta is equal to theta 1, that is equal to 0.1, probability x is equal to x 2 is equal to say 0.2, probability x is equal to x 3 is equal to say 0.7. So, when the parameter value is theta 1, this is the probability distribution. When theta 2 is the parameter value, the probability distribution is given by say 0.2, 0.4 and say 0.4, and when theta 3 is the true parameter value, suppose the probability distribution is given by 0.3, 0.6 and 0.1. Let me define a partition here. Let us consider partition x1, x2 and x3. Now, consider the conditional distribution of x given the partition sets. Here we have two sets. So, one set is, let me call it A, another set I call B. So, what is the probability of x is equal to x1 given say x is equal to x1 or x is equal to x2, that is given that x belongs to A. Now, here it will be dependent upon the, that means we have to calculate this probability under different parametric configurations. Let me consider say theta is equal to theta 1. When I take probability of x is equal to x1 given x belonging to A, then we apply the conditional probability formula. This will be equal to probability of x is equal to x1 divided by probability x belonging to A, that is when x equal to x1 or x equal to x2. Now, when theta is equal to theta 1, probability of x equal to x1 is 0.1 and probability of x equal to x2 is equal to 0.2. So, this value turns out to be 0.1 divided by 0.1 plus 0.2, that is equal to 1 by 3. Now, if I consider say theta 2 x is equal to x1 given x equal to x1 or x equal to x2, again you notice here when theta is equal to theta 2, the corresponding probabilities are 0.2 and 0.4. So, this value will turn out to be 0.2 divided by 0.2 plus 0.4, that is once again 1 by 3, and in a similar way if I calculate when theta is equal to theta 3, this is turning out to be 0.3 by 0.3 plus 0.6, that is again 1 by 3. So, what we have found that the conditional probability of x is equal to x1 given x belongs to A is free from theta. However, we need to check other configurations also. That means, what is the probability of x is equal to x2 given x equal to x1 or x equal to x2. Once again, when theta is equal to theta 1, this value will become 0.2 divided by 0.1 plus 0.2. When theta is equal to theta 2, it will become equal to 0.4 divided by 0.2 plus 0.4. When theta is equal to theta 3, this probability will be equal to 0.6 divided by 0.3 plus 0.6. That means, it is equal to 2 by 3 in all the cases. That means, it is free from the value of theta. Similarly, if I consider x is equal to x3 given x belonging to A, then this is going to be 0, because when you take the numerator probability of x equal to x3 intersection x belongs to A, that is going to be 0. So, this is equal to I is equal to 1, 2, 3. Then similarly, if I consider probability of x is equal to x1 given x belonging to B, that is x is equal to x3, then that is also 0, and this will be true for all I is equal to 1, 2, 3. If I consider probability of x is equal to x2 given x equal to x3, that is also going to be 0 for I is equal to 1, 2, 3. If I consider theta I x is equal to x3 given x equal to x3, that is going to be 1 for I is equal to 1, 2, 3. So, we can say that this is a sufficient partition. So, if I consider a function t which is assigning one value to say t x 1 and t x 2 as some value and t x 3 as another value, let me call it value a and this value as b, where a is different from b, then t must be sufficient. That means, a function which partitions the variable space into two parts, one part is consisting of x 1 and x 2 and another one is consisting of x 3, then that will be sufficient. Just to tell that this is not a unique way of looking at it. For example, in place of x 1, x 2, x 3, where I have clubbed x 1 and x 2, suppose I had clubbed in a different way. For example, if I had clubbed, let me consider another partition, let me call it p star. Suppose I had put x 1 and say x 2, x 3. Let us see what is the probability of say x 2 given x is equal to x 2 or x is equal to x 3. Now, when theta is equal to theta 1, this probability will be equal to, now x 2 given x 2 is equal to x 3. So, this will become equal to 0.2 divided by 0.2 plus 0.7, 0.2 divided by 0.2 plus 0.7, that is 2 by 9. Now, if I consider theta 2, same probability, then for theta 2 these values are 0.4 and 0.4. So, this value will be turning out to be half. This is not same as this. So, p star is not a sufficient partition. Consequently, any statistic which will induce this partition will not be sufficient. Let me a sufficient statistic induces a sufficient partition and conversely, given a sufficient partition, we can define a sufficient statistics. Of course, this is not necessarily unique. And also two statistics T 1 and T 2 that induce the same partition must be in 1-to-1 correspondence. With each other. Now, we define the concept of minimal sufficient partition and minimal sufficient statistics. So, a partition say P is said to be minimal sufficient if this is sufficient, and second, if P star is any other sufficient partition, then P is P star is then P star is a reduction of P. No, I am sorry, this is written wrongly. If P star is any other sufficient partition, then P is a reduction of P star. So, let me explain. We will call it minimal sufficient partition if first of all this should be sufficient partition, and if there is any other sufficient partition, then this should be a reduction of that. That is why this is the maximal reduction, or we say that it is a minimal sufficient partition. So, a statistic which induces the minimal sufficient partition is called a minimal sufficient statistic. So, we can say that a statistic T is minimal sufficient if it is sufficient and if S is any other sufficient statistic, then T is a function of S. So, that is how it is the minimal sufficient, that is the maximal reduction of the data. Now, the question is that how to determine a minimal sufficient statistic or a minimal sufficient partition in a given problem. This problem is settled by Lehman and Shafi in 1950 and 55 in papers in Sankhya. We consider here the case when the distribution is either discrete or continuous. So, let us consider f x theta, let f x theta denote the joint probability density function or probability mass function of x. That means, we have observations x 1, x 2, x n, which we are calling as x here. Now, 2 points x and y in the sample space are said to be equivalent if the ratio f x theta by f y theta does not depend on theta. Of course, when we write the ratio of the densities at two different variable points, then there is a possibility that either the numerator or the denominator may be 0 or both may be 0. So, in that case we qualify this statement by saying whenever this ratio is defined. So, this we say that x and y are equivalent and we use the notation x is equivalent to y. Then this relation is an equivalence relation. Because it is reflexive, if I consider f x theta by f x theta, that is going to be 1, which is free from the parameter. If f x theta by f y theta is free from theta, then f y theta by f x theta is also free from the parameter. Therefore, x related to y is equivalent to saying y is equivalent to x. So, the relation is symmetric. If I say x is equivalent to y, that is f x theta by f y theta is independent of theta, and if I say y is related to z or y is equivalent to z, then f y theta by f z theta is independent of theta. So, if I consider f x theta by f z theta, then that is equal to product of these two terms. So, that is also free from so this is independent of theta, that is we can say x is equivalent to z. So, the relation is also transitive. So, this is an equivalence relation and it induces a partition of the sample space into equivalent sets. That means, if I consider one set in this partition class, then within that class all the points will be equivalent, and if I take two different partition sets, then the points in that will not be equivalent. So, now let us consider for each point x in the sample space, define dx as the set of all the y's such that y is equivalent to x. That is, for every point whatever be the equivalent points, I will put them in the set dx. Then x belongs to dx, and also if x belongs to dy, then y will belong to dx. So, in this case dx and dy are same, and also there will be place where the density will take value 0, that is density or the probability mass function. We put in another set, let d naught be the set of all those points for which f x theta is equal to 0 for all theta. So, now each x lies in some d, and d's do not overlap, they form a partition of the sample space. Let us call this partition pi. Okay. This partition I will name as pi. First, we prove that pi is a sufficient partition. Now, let us consider for each set D, let x d be a representative point Okay. Now, let G x denote this association, that means from D to x D we are having a mapping. So, let G x denote this mapping from x to dx and to x d. So, for a given point x we have the point dx and then I am choosing a representative point dx of that set. That means, in this set dx all the points are equivalent to each other and I specify one point x d there. So, G x is a statistic defined on this partition. Now, for any partition set D, of course, I am not considering D naught where f x theta is 0, and for any x in D, let us write f x theta. Now, x belongs to dx and x d also belongs to this. So, f x theta divided by x d theta is free from the parameter. That means, this is a multiple of f x d theta by a term which we can say it is free from theta, it is a function of x and x d. So, we can call it a function of x and g x and f g x theta. This x d I am writing as g x, which we can write as f x theta is equal to g of g x theta into h of x, where h of x is actually 0 if x belongs to d naught and it is equal to k of x g x if x does not belong to d naught, and g of g x theta is nothing but f of g x theta. Now, if you see this carefully, this is nothing but the factorization here. So, we conclude that g x is in a sufficient statistic and the partition pi is sufficient partition, because that is induced by G. Now, let us consider, now we prove that pi is minimal sufficient. For that, let us consider another, say h x, let h x be any other sufficient statistic. And let the corresponding partition sets be, let me call them E. The partition sets induced by pi were D and the partition sets induced by E, let me call by H, let me call it to be E. Now, if we can show that the minimality of pi will follow if we can show that each set in E is contained in some D. except of course the points where the probability is 0. So, let us consider x and y be points in E, so that say h x is equal to h y. Now, h is sufficient. So, we can write f x theta is equal to say alpha x into beta of h x theta. Now, that we can write as alpha x beta of h y theta, and f y theta we can write as alpha y beta h y theta. So, if I take the ratio here, we get f y theta by f x theta is equal to alpha y by alpha x. That means, we can say f y theta is equal to a function of say x y into f x theta. So, x is equivalent to y, that is x y belong to same D. Thus, each set E is contained in some D, of course, except possibly those points x such that alpha x is equal to 0. So, pi is minimal sufficient, because pi is a reduction of this partition that we have introduced, second partition. So, this gives us a method of determining the minimal sufficient statistics. What we consider that you take ratio f x theta divided by f y theta, and this should be free from the parameter. So, what is the partition that will induce this condition, and the corresponding sufficient corresponding statistic, then if we find out, that will be minimal sufficient. So, let me explain through some examples. Let us consider the cases of the standard distributions. Suppose I consider Poisson lambda distribution, and we denote by x the x 1, x 2, x n, and by small x we denote the points. So, consider the f x lambda here, that is e to the power minus n lambda, lambda to the power sigma x I divided by product of x I factorial, I is equal to 1 to n. So, let me consider the ratio f x lambda divided by f y lambda, then that is equal to e to the power minus n lambda will cancel out, we will get lambda to the power sigma x I minus sigma y I, and product of y I factorial divided by product of x I factorial. Now, this term is dependent upon parameter through this, and we can easily see that this is independent of lambda if and only if sigma x I is equal to sigma y I. So, by the previous result that we have proved of by Lehmann and Shafi, we conclude that T x is equal to sigma x I is minimal sufficient. Of course, we can say that any one-to-one function of a minimal sufficient statistic is also minimal sufficient. Let me just take up the cases of the sufficient statistics that we worked out in the previous classes. We had seen like binomial distribution, normal distribution, exponential distribution, etc. Let us look at each of those cases and see what were the sufficient statistics. Consider this case. X1, X2, Xn is a random sample from normal mu sigma square and sigma square is known. Now, in this case the joint distribution that we wrote was of the form 1 by root 2 pi to the power n e to the power minus sigma xi square by 2 e to the power minus n mu square plus n mu x bar. Now, in this case if I consider the ratio by taking f x mu divided by f y mu, this term will become free from the variable, free from the parameter. E to the power minus n mu square will also cancel out. We will be left with e to the power n mu x bar minus y bar. Now, that will be free from mu if and only if x bar is equal to y bar, and therefore, x bar is the minimal sufficient statistics. So, like that if we consider various problems, like in the second case we have taken mu naught is known, and in this case we figured out that sigma xi minus mu naught whole square is sufficient. So, this will also become minimal sufficient. When both mu and sigma square are unknown, then sigma xi and sigma xi square will become minimal sufficient. So, in most of the problems where we have applied factorization theorem, we actually have a factorization. So, if we write down the ratio, then the term which is consisting of the parameter theta there, then it is related to g of t x theta divided by g of t y theta. So, this ratio if you consider and obtain the condition when it is going to be free from the parameter, that will give the minimal sufficient statistics. So, like that if I just mention x 1, x 2, x n follow normal mu sigma square. So, if mu and sigma square are unknown, then sigma xi and sigma xi square is minimal sufficient. Of course, we can say x bar and s square is minimal sufficient. And we can answer various other questions. Let me just tell few of these here. Let us consider say exponential distribution with parameter lambda. Here if I write down the ratio, we will get sigma xi as the minimal sufficient. If we consider exponential distribution with location parameter, then x 1 will be turning out to be minimal sufficient. If we consider say 2 parameter exponential distribution with parameter mu and sigma here, then x 1 and x bar or x 1 and sigma xi will be minimal sufficient. If we consider say a double exponential distribution, in that case the full sample which is written in by reduced to the order statistics, that will be minimal sufficient. If we consider uniform distribution on the interval 0 to theta, then x n will be minimal sufficient. If we are considering exponential family, then this statistic that we have written, this will be minimal sufficient. Let me introduce another concept, that is completeness. Let x be a random variable with probability distribution p theta, theta belonging to theta. So, we say that the family of probability distributions p, that is equal to p theta, theta belonging to theta, is complete if expectation theta g x is equal to 0 for all theta belonging to theta, and any function g implies that probability that g x is equal to 0 is 1 for all theta belonging to theta. Then a statistic T is said to be complete if the family of probability distributions of T is complete. Let me give an example here. Let x follow say binomial NP distribution where n is known and parameter p lies between 0 to 1. Let us consider expectation of g x is equal to 0 for all p in the interval 0 to 1. Now, this statement is equivalent to g x n c x p to the power x 1 minus p to the power n minus x, x is equal to 0 to n, that is equal to 0 for all p belonging to 0 to 1. Now, this we can also write as, see 1 minus p to the power n we can cancel out on both the sides, and let us write say let me write say s is equal to p divided by 1 minus p. So, this will be any positive term. So, we can say h x into s to the power x, x equal to 0 to n is equal to 0 for all s greater than 0, where h x is nothing but the function g x into n c x. Okay. Now, if you see this left hand side, this is a polynomial of degree n in S, and I am saying it is vanishing identically over an interval. This implies that h x must be 0 for all x. Now, here for all x means because x can take values 0, 1 to n. This means that probability that h x is equal to 0 is 1 for all p. So, the family of binomial distributions is complete. So, the family of binomial distributions N p, where p lies between 0 to 1 is complete, or we can say here x is a complete statistic. Let us take another example, say x follows Poisson lambda. Then lambda is a positive parameter here. Let us write down the statement expectation of g x is equal to 0 for all lambda. Now, this is equivalent to sigma g x e to the power minus lambda, lambda to the power x by x factorial, x is equal to 0 to infinity, that is 0 for all lambda greater than 0. Now, e to the power minus lambda is a positive term. So, we can multiply by e to the power lambda on both the sides. This statement becomes equivalent to say g star x into lambda to the power x, where this g star is nothing but g x by x factorial. Once again, if you notice on the left hand side, I have a power series in lambda, which is vanishing identically over the positive half of the real line. So, if a power series vanishes identically over an interval, all the coefficients must vanish. So, that means this is equal to 0 for all x equal to 0, 1, 2 and so on. Therefore, we can say that probability that g star x is equal to 0 is 1 for all lambda. Now, g star is nothing but g x by x factorial, that means g x itself is 0 with probability 1. So, this family of probability distributions of Poisson lambda is complete. Let us consider say x follows normal mu 1. Here mu is any real number. Let us write down expectation of g x is equal to 0 for all mu. Now, this is equivalent to saying g x 1 by root 2 pi e to the power minus 1 by 2 x minus mu square dx. This we may write as g x into e to the power minus x square by 2 e to the power mu x dx is equal to 0 for all mu belonging to R. Now, this is nothing but the bilateral or bivariate Laplace transform of this function, and we are saying this vanishes identically, and therefore, the function itself should vanish. That means, we should have g x is equal to 0 almost everywhere on x real line. This means that probability that g x is equal to 0 is 1 for all mu. So, the family of the normal distributions is complete family. Let us consider x following uniform 0 theta. Expectation of g x is equal to 0 for all theta. This is equivalent to the statement g x by theta dx 0 to theta is equal to 0. Now, this term I can adjust here. So, what we are saying is that the integral of g x is 0 for all values for over all the intervals of the form 0 to theta. Therefore, we can using the Lebesgue integration theory, we can say that the function g x itself is 0 almost everywhere. That means, probability that g x is equal to 0 must be 1 for all theta. So, the family of uniform distributions is also complete. So, what in the next lecture I will give a general framework for the completeness. We will also define bounded completeness, and the consequence of the sufficiency and completeness is that we can easily derive uniformly minimum variance unbiased estimators. So, we will give these applications in the next lecture.